You are pretty quiet, Barbara.
Okay, great.
Yeah, you have gotten lighter.
All righty. I'm going to plug in this and see if this makes any difference. Let's see. Does that help at all? Does that make it any stronger, or is that not helpful?
Same.
Same.
Okay, I'll just speak up. Make sure you can hear me. How's that?
That's better.
Okay, great. So, well, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here, and delighted to have our third session focused on deepening in that resource, and then also how do we deal with personal challenges. And goodness knows, being human presents us with many. So anyway, I thought it would be fun to start out again with just a little sharing, get everyone's voice involved, and ask you to just tell us something about yourself that might surprise us. So I'll start. So you know my name, Barbara, and the thing that might surprise you is that I play the accordion. So started when I was 9 years old, and spent some time, about 9 or 10 years, learning, and just play now for fun, but I had a lot of fun with that when I was growing up. So anyway, might be surprised to know I'm an accordionist. Great. So then, yeah, anyone else want to go next? And then after you speak, if you would mute yourself, because the noise gets a little bit, makes it a little bit harder to hear when there's external things going on. So yeah, so anyone else move to share your name and something that might surprise us about you?
I'll share.
Okay, Amy.
Amy here, Amy Sun. You might be surprised to know that I was a bicycle mechanic for from pretty much the age 13. It was my first job all through high school, and yeah, I did it for like at least six seasons. I lost track.
Oh my gosh, that is surprising and really fun to know. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Good. Anyone else ready to? Yeah, go ahead, Lynn.
Hi, everybody. Glad to be here. Let's see. I backpacked through Europe by myself, and I ended up living in India for about a year. Maybe you don't know that.
Wow. Didn't know that.
Amazing.
All right, I'll take a try at this. When I was, I don't know, probably in my 30s somewhere, I got it into my head to take a river rafting trip, a whitewater river rafting trip down the Zambezi River. Some people don't know where that is. It's in East Africa, in the Rift Valley. We saw hippopotami and crocodiles, which were very dangerous. And I hadn't really reckoned on how dangerous it was until I got there.
Surprise.
Quite an eye-opening adventure.
Oh my gosh. Well, we're glad you made it safely through.
Me too, 7 days.
Well, you may or may not be surprised because you don't know much about me, but I'm conversant with remote places also, starting with a little farm in Nebraska where I grew up with 11 siblings, or 10 siblings, and was also in the Rift Valley a couple of times.
Wow. Small
world. Are we talking about things that people would be surprised about?
Yes, we're saying our name and sharing something that might surprise you to know about ourselves. Yeah, great.
I'll share. I'm Patty. When I was in my early 30s, I guess that's a time that you do things that are risky. I did about 3 or 4 firewalks on hot coals.
Wow. Wow. Fascinating.
Yeah. Mind over matter, so to speak.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I'd love to hear more about that. Maybe another time we can talk and hear more. That sounds exciting and interesting. Wow. Thank you, Patty.
Yeah, I had a bunch of opportunities to do that, and I always said no.
Right. All the more reason I'd like to hear about Patty's experience, because not eager to do that.
Well, you said mind over matter. Would you say that was the big takeaway, that that's
Well, yeah, and you just can't replicate it when you want to, like that. It has to be, I was in a group, we would talk for about 2 hours, and then the leader, who was a friend of mine, we were all friends, he walked across, and we just all said, well, if he can do it, I can do it. So we all just walked across, and they were hot, because the next morning I felt them. And I said, oh my, I walked across these poles last night, and they were hotter than they are now. So it's just, it's kind of mind over matter in the moment. I wouldn't say I could replicate something like that by myself.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you for sharing. Great. And Wendy, welcome. Happy to have you.
Hi, I'm glad to be here.
So we've all just shared our names and something that might surprise everyone about ourselves by way of introduction. Is there anything you'd like to share?
Sure. I'm Wendy, and I just got back from Puerto Rico last night, where I helped to mend 3 roofs for people that had been damaged 1.5 years ago in the Hurricane Maria. And it was really rewarding.
Oh, wow, Wendy, great.
Yeah, it was really great. We were there for a week, and there were 11 of us, and we were 6 women in 1 dormitory room, and we all survived.
Wow. I'd love to hear more about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was
Absolutely.
really great.
Wow. Well, thank you for your service and for sharing that with us. That's very inspiring. So wonderful. Well, thank you all. This is a beautiful opening to our continued conversation about how to express in the world in an open-hearted way. And so maybe what we could do, I think there's a little bit of extraneous noise. So if you don't mind putting yourself on mute, and then hopefully, I guess my voice is a little bit softer today than has been in the past. So I will continue to project, and please let me know though can't hear you if it does get too soft. So anyway, so I'm thrilled to be with you again. And this particular topic, how to deal with personal challenges and continue to resource ourselves in that is never failing, that is always here, is really my passion. So this is why I started this organization called Undefended Heart. And the exercise we're going to do today is really kind of the pivotal piece of that work. And I've done it in a lot of places, and you may be familiar with this exercise, but it seems to be fresh for people, even if you've seen it before or heard about it. So hopefully it will be that for you as well. And again, I'm excited to be here and to share and hopefully help us all deepen in this that we truly are, and to live our beauty and our love more and more deeply and more fully in the world of time and space, as we access that is timeless, spacious, and ever revealing itself in all kinds of ways. So anyway, so that's a little introduction where we're going to head today. Is there anyone that wants to share anything that's come up over the last few weeks, anything about any of your practices that you're finding helpful or that you're needing support with? I just want to make sure, and again, there's no need to share, but if you'd like to, I want to make sure we build in space for that integration and processing as you continue to deepen yourself in this material and these practices. So feel free, if you have something, you can just take yourself off mute and speak, and if no one does, then I will just continue.
I have a question that it could end up being a whole can of worms. It's a little bit review.
Okay.
So if you want to save it for later, that's fine, but I'll just mention it. When we had our psychosynthesis group on Sunday, and we were synthesizing another person's offering, and we've hosted many different offerings now, it hit me that there was sort of a simple categorization in a way for me of what people are bringing, and I'm getting a lot of really useful examples of this from you that I'm using. which is, it seems to me that what the most helpful practices, they're either helping us stay in a continuous state of presence, or they're helping us return to presence based. I mean, it's not rocket science, I guess, but for me, it was kind of an aha moment because, it's like, there's a lot of information coming at us this year, a lot of different methods and stuff. And so it just helped me to kind of categorize that, like, if this one method works, why I don't need all of them or whatever. It just helped simplify, like, oh, this is what we're doing. It's about presence. And so I'm just wondering if that it seems to me that and I'm curious if this is accurate to you, but it seems to me that you're bringing, from my experience so far, without having maybe going over everything, but definitely the bilateral stimulation was help. I used that this weekend when I was I was in a leadership position to a new degree in our community, helping host the event, and it was, there's like a subpersonality trying to, or ego or something that I was just like struggling with, like trying to be present and listen to people. And I was tapping my toes, and it totally brought me back much. And so I'm grateful for that. And I guess the one question that came up for me is I hear a lot, people are talking a lot about the neuroscience and stuff lately. And I think you had shared that, it takes like 20 minutes or I've heard somewhere that it takes a while for your body to like naturally kind of come down from that. When you're sort of triggered or whatever, and you're like in a subpersonality or you're otherwise kind of off center, that it's and I understand that this is a physical process that the body has to kind of re-regulate to, but it seems that the practice, is this correct, that the practice of like bilateral stimulation and stuff, that it somehow accelerates that, literally makes it faster? And can you just maybe quickly speak about that, if you don't mind?
Yeah, I will. And I'll speak to your first question as also. You said, like, are we really just kind of coming back to presence? I would say yes, and I would add also connection. So we're being present, and we're seeing how we can stay present in ourselves, right? It kind of inhabit our own space, our own human form, inhabit ourselves, while we're also seeing that we're not disconnected, that in fact we're intimately in union with everything and everyone around us at the same time. So I would add, in addition to being present, it's this aspect of connection that to me is what brings hope for the world. That if we could really grok this, that word grok, right? Really get it on a deep level, then when we're in conflict with someone, when we're having a difficulty, if we can feel connection, we can build something even across difference. So it's being present enough to be here in ourselves, as well as see that we're not separate from the totality. So that's, I just would share that for your first question. And the second, I would say, I do think the bilateral stimulation can accelerate the quickness, how rapidly we come back from feeling triggered. And I've, again, experimented with this myself, had something totally derail me, lie down on my bed and just do that practice. And within, I would say 5 or 10 minutes instead of 20, I felt more grounded in myself again. So I do think that these practices can be supportive, that left to our own devices without some intervention, probably 20 minutes to get back, before the feeling of fight or flight de-escalates. So I think that, going out for a quick walk, again, you're moving your body in a bilateral way. So walking can help do that. So there are many ways to support yourself if that is happening. And I think you're right on that it's accelerated with these practices. Yeah.
So is 5 minutes about the max that you can hope for? Or is there anything that's like really just brings you back?
I think the more we deepen in this knowing of ourselves as not separate, then, I've watched some of my teachers who seem to have gotten a little like, a little something comes in when I've been with them in informal and formal situations, and it's not 5 minutes at all. So no, I think there's not a minimum time that you're going to be in that. It depends on how free you feel in the totality, rather than attached to your sense of yourself having been attacked, if that makes sense.
Huh. Okay. So one of the people actually commented in our recent gathering when I was trying to wrap my head around this. She said that they've done, Carlin, you might remember, I think it was Christiana Elric said something about that they'd done some kind of measured people who meditated regularly, or monks maybe, or something. I didn't quite catch all the details of the example, but that they found that's not that they don't go off, it's that they can come back really quickly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it sounded like there might be some evidence to that being a quicker process. Okay.
Yeah, I basically grasped that the answer to your question, is there one thing that works faster than anything else? It's practice.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's what I got from the story about the monks, is that they practice bringing themselves back. I think it was Christiana who made the point that we're not trying to learn any more than the monks are trying to teach us to be in a constant state of presence. What we as mere mortals need to learn as ordinary people is to come back. That's the muscle we're trying to grow and the neural pathways we're trying to develop. Am I right to understand this from you as well, Barbara? That the point is to learn to come back. That's the muscle we want to strengthen, not to get to the point where we never need to bring ourselves back because we're so present 100% of the time.
Well, and I think, though, that just gradually what happens as we exercise that coming back, right? So what is currently the default, that state of kind of trance, self-focus, commentary, all those things, time traveling, that as you continue to come back, then that experiential network grows such that can become the new default. You know what I mean? So it's possible for these to kind of switch places so that you spend more time in that experiential network, more time in presence, so that when blips come, they're less apt to derail you. So yeah, absolutely. I think you both have great wisdom about this process. So yeah, for sure.
And just to comment, like what I meant by like not going off in the first place, I think that there's that too, because, like for instance, just knowing that I mean, some of these things that you just said, like knowing that we time travel, knowing that we do there's certain awarenesses, it seems to me, that just help to maintain the presence more. And I mean, I won't say a lot about them, but
I can say with absolute certainty that since I started all this learning and practice myself, there are times when I know things arise that would have triggered me in another time and place that do not trigger me anymore. So that it is possible to come to a new way of understanding and a new way of being in the world, such that, you might not find yourself reactive in a way you would have been 5 years ago or something, so it absolutely changes, completely possible. I mean, the body literally is changing moment by moment. We look around us, life is always changing. Change is a part of us. And the irony to me is that the more we stabilize in that is unchanging, the more that we can move with what changes with more ease and more grace. Okay. Isn't that interesting, right? There's like this paradox in there. Yeah. So great. You're very welcome. Good. All right. So why don't we jump in then? We kind of already here, but I will see if we can pull up the slides and see what else wants to come forward here. So I love that you've asked for these to be shared ahead of time. So I have appreciated that. It sort of frees some of my desire to, make sure we talk about every single thing here, because I feel like if there's something here you're curious about, we would have had it brought up or be a question. So I'm presuming that, and if that's not the case, please do let me know. So I'm going to make this even smaller so you can see that when the recording comes, because let's see here. So we did this, and so this is what I'm suggesting, that when we let ourselves be filled with this love that is already and always here, then when we feel a sense of emptiness or lack, a sense of anxiety, and we might be drawn even to fill that with something else, we can just observe. Does that really work? You know, temporarily it might make us feel a little bit better, but then does the sense of something missing come back? And if so, are we willing to experiment by allowing ourselves to rest into that is already and always here? And so that's an interesting kind of inquiry for me, and I'm hoping it might be helpful for you, because we move in the world of duality, right? We have right and wrong, black and white, it's hot or it's cold, right? So as human beings, we are in a world of opposites. And yet, when we ask ourselves this question, and if you read on ahead already, you know where I'm heading with this. To me, at least what I've discovered is that the one thing that doesn't have any opposite is awareness itself. Because no matter what opposites arise, there's always awareness there as the unconditional presence, looking at, being aware of, noticing, right? And so resting as that can bring us back to this sense of wholeness and unity, feeling complete and feeling connected to another human being, because we know that we all share this. To different degrees, we're consciously aware, but awareness itself is de facto part of our human experience. So again, if you, I put on here, if you sense that maybe being unaware is the opposite of being aware, and I can understand that feeling, like, oh, for a while I felt like I was so unconscious. You know, I went sort of, you know, off into my mind, and I was thinking about time traveling or something like that. But something's aware that that's happening. So that's why I suggest to you, it's again, you know, for you to feel into for yourself. Isn't it true that awareness itself is always here? Because even when we feel personally unconscious, something is aware of that too. Does that make sense? Get the feel of that? And that's why, to me, that is an essential. So again, if you're looking for like one key piece, Amy, to me, this is it. It's to discover that's already whole, that's already unified, and that can support our feeling that way as well in our humanness, with our default patterns of you know, looking for somewhere other than here to be, because we think maybe there's another place that feels more true or more whole, or that gives us a sense of connection that's not possible in the world of time and space. So anyway, for your consideration. So then again, I put up here Sajoli's quote, and he's saying this in a way too. I'm just gonna again make this a little smaller so we can see it. He's saying the constant input of influences veils the clarity of consciousness and produces our identification with the content of consciousness rather than with consciousness itself. And so he's giving us this opening into the disidentification process, because he's saying if we can disidentify from the content of consciousness, we can see that there's something here that's quite clear. And in another quote, he says that self is not separate from our sense of personal self, that these are different kind of, I can't remember his exact quote, but it's like as if they're different aspects of the same one light. Okay, so again, I'm grounding this today in this identification, disidentification, self-identification process to really hopefully encourage you to see that this is, to me, one of the hearts of psychosynthesis. So Carlin, I see your hand up. Yeah, go for it.
I didn't realize you're referring to the screen and I'm not seeing the slides. Is everyone seeing the slides? Because I'm not seeing the slides, so I don't know what I did to lose the slides.
Okay. I'm not sure. I don't know when.
Oh, maybe you need to unpin Barbara.
Oh, there you go. If you pin
I didn't pin her.
Okay.
But how would I? Would I click pin her again if I had?
If you hover over her picture in the upper right hand corner, there's 3 dots. You hover over, you click on those, and it'll give you a menu. and it's pin video. If pin video is your option, then you have not pinned her yet.
Yeah.
It would
I
tell
haven't.
you, I think, unpin or something.
I haven't. Anyway, I'll be okay. I can pick up the slides from what you sent, right? You sent the link. So I'll just I just want to make sure that I was the only one. There's obviously an issue on my end.
Right. Okay. Well, I apologize for that. I wish I could help. I'm not quite sure.
I'll just get the slides from your email.
Yeah.
No problem.
Okay. Great. So I got ahead of myself. Sometimes when I try to click, it doesn't quite go in the direction I think it jumps ahead of me. So I'm going to go back over here. So again, I'm just suggesting. So Carl and I have up this slide now that reviews what we've been talking about with content-less awareness, that we feel it as spacious, it's aware, it's unconditionally accepting or loving, and it's palpable because we notice when someone's attending to us, paying attention, and when they're not. And it's always here and always now. So again, for me, this is what, when Asa Jolie gave us the to identify, disidentify process, I've often heard psychosynthesis talk about it as it's a two-step movement, but really when you look at it, it's a three-step movement. You identify what's present, disidentify from that, and then self-identification. And to me, this is what the self-identification refers to. It's to see that the totality contains both all of the personal as well as this realm of what is contentless. And so when we move to that, then it seems to me we are more apt to be able to respond in a given moment in a way that is more life-giving and that feels more true to our higher self, we could say, right? So because this is what we're really putting our emphasis on in that. So again, this is my working theory, my proposal. And I thought we could start again with this tuning in around inner resource to make sure you're feeling comfortable with having a sense of an inner resource. And for some people, they can immediately get the idea that contentless awareness is the resource they can move toward. But for others, it helps to have an image, to have a sense of a place in nature, something with friends, so forth. So if it's all right with everyone, I thought I would guide you a little bit on this inner resource kind of question and see if that is continued to be supportive, because that's where we want to start with. Because when we get into personal challenge, if we have an ultimate resource that we can go to, then immediately we're already not completely captured by what's happening, if that makes sense. You get the feel of that, why this is essential to the personal challenge piece, at least as I'm putting it out here. Yeah. And again, I'm just put this up to remember that the negative bias is operating. Your brain might be scanning for what's wrong, see what we can do to stay safe. And so we can notice that, and we don't have to glom on. We don't have to let our consciousness go to that. We can come back, as you were saying earlier, both Carlin and Amy, into this that is already here, so that we habituate more, like we come home, right? It becomes a new home base, right? We come back to it. So we deepen into that. So it's our richest, most real experience of life, even in the midst of storms. Okay?
Yeah, on slide 10.
Right here, let's see, what is this? 13. So I just clicked on to 13. And so my thought is that I would do just a little bit of guiding here, if that's all right with everyone. And we can just see if we can feel this a little more deeply. And again, I'm going to guide us a little bit around finding an image, but I want to encourage you to not get tied to your image, to really more get a sense of the felt sense, which I think Christiana was talking about, probably if she was working with, I think it's Gendlin's work, around the felt sense of something. And what I'm encouraging us to feel is the felt, palpable sense of our beingness, right? This that is always and already here. Okay, so it's a kind of a somatic orientation, not just an imagination exercise, if that makes some sense. And hopefully in my guiding, I can help you experience that if you're not clear what I'm heading toward. That makes sense? Yeah, okay, great. All right, so sorry, that just flipped ahead again. So I guess it's the opposite of what I think. I don't know. Interesting. Here we go. Great. Sorry about that. A little technical difficulty today. So if you're comfortable, then I invite you to just settle in and settle more deeply into your own chair or whatever you're resting upon. And if you're comfortable, you're welcome to close your eyes and just notice what's present. Notice the breath flowing in and out. Notice any sensations in your body. Allow yourself to notice if you have certain thoughts that are coming and going in your mind's cognitive stream. And then as you feel into all of that, also notice that there's something here that's simply aware. You might feel it. Sorry to disturb. Amy, if you don't mind putting yourself on mute, there might be, I think, a little background noise coming through. Thank you.
Sure.
Great. Thank you. And so we're feeling into this that is present and aware, this that is always here, this that is completely accepting of all of the experience, the content of our humanness, completely accepting of all that is around us in the world, completely accepting of all the joy, the beauty, the pain, and the sorrow. And this we can feel as we rest back into our deepest core. And as you look back over your life, you might recognize this sense of just being, just simply being, has always been here. And this feeling of being might be beyond words to even describe, but there's something that's been witness to your whole life. And this presence, this sense of beingness is undeniable. Because while in memory we can look back and see ourselves at different ages and notice growth in our humanness, there's also something here that just feels constant, that feels like what I really am. The part of me that notices all the changes is itself not changing. And so again, I invite you to feel this as a felt sense in your body. When we fully inhabit our whole bodies, we can feel this sense of wholeness, completeness. This that is unconditionally accepting. And I'm going to share a few images that other people sense as places that they can feel this in the event that you're not able to fully inhabit yourself, fully get the sense of it, perhaps remembering a time when you were in a lovely meadow by a beautiful stream, in a gorgeous river, with white water flowing in a forest where you feel a sense of peace, or some other special place in nature. Perhaps you sense safety and completeness and wholeness when you're in a room and you're surrounded by favorite things or favorite people. Perhaps being with a loved one that is special to you gives you that sense of complete wholeness and safety. Or surrounded by friends, being with an animal or animals that you love. Perhaps your own inner positive subpersonalities allow you to feel a sense of spacious safety. And last, perhaps there's a symbol or an archetype that has brought you some comfort, given you a sense of connection, allowed you to rest into your own fullness. In whatever manner you sense this beingness, you sense the totality or wholeness of your own self, I invite you to set an intention to come back to that when you're in the midst of personal challenge, when you're having a difficult moment in your day, when you're in a relationship and something doesn't feel quite on. Know that this sense of your beingness, your wholeness, this that is undivided and has no opposite, is always able to be here, present, able to meet anything that arises at any moment, at any time. And as you're ready, just slowly open your eyes, coming back into our collective space, back into our room, the room that we are connected in across miles, across time, and know that this is here right now, always present. So we'll carry that special beingness forward. And again, I just want to pause if there's anything that anyone wants to ask about or share. And my real hope is that just that you have a felt sense of that, and that you have a place where you can continue to come home to that feels this undivided whole nature. So. Great. Wonderful. So I'm not seeing any hands, not seeing anyone wants to talk, so I'm going to jump back into our slides, if that's all right with everyone, and get us into this exercise today that I find very helpful. Let's see here. Oops. I shared my desktop instead of my slides, pardon me. There we go. Okay. So what I'm going to ask you to do now, if you didn't already when you got this slide here, is just take a few minutes and jot down the key qualities that describe you. If you didn't print this out, you can just take out a piece of paper and write on the left of the paper, "This is me," and then just jot down some words. So for me, I would say on the quality of "this is me," I think of myself as honest. So I would write honest on this side, and then over here, write its opposite. And then "this is not me" side. So dishonest would be over here. I'll give you another example. I think of myself as kind. So I'd write that on the "this is me" side, and I'd write unkind over on "this is not me." Okay, so if you would just take a minute to jot a few words or phrases down and get a little sense of this, how you think of yourself. So I'm going to go on and just share the next page so that if you're finished with that, you can continue. And the next thing I'd like you to do is just take a few moments and think about a time when you got upset with another person, or it could be with an organization or a group of people, and something that has, on a scale of 1 to 10, a 5 or less in intensity, so that we're not re-traumatizing or reactivating something that was very intense for you. And what I'd like you to do is just in a stream of consciousness style, write down what did he or she or they do to you that caused you to become reactive. And again, I'm not going to ask you to share this. It's just for your own purposes of deep looking and awareness. But just be honest and tell what you think happened from your perspective. So again, she did this to me, and then this happened. So again, just maybe 4 or 5 sentences to get a feel for something that you felt was problematic and difficult. Okay? So you may still be writing, and that's fine. I'm going to give you the third step of this exercise in case you have finished. As you look over what you've written, those couple sentences, what I'd like you to do is go through and circle kind of the descriptors. When, like, I'll give you the example. So she lied to me, and she was unkind, and then we went into the room, and da da da. So you circle unkind, lied. So what are the behaviors that are particularly troublesome to you or were troublesome to you in that incident that you're writing about? So just circle those descriptors, I call them. That makes sense? Yeah. Okay. Does anyone need a little more time? No? Okay. So the last piece of this, what I'd like you to do now is to go back at your, let's see here, still not. To go back to the me, not me, here we go. And look at what you've circled in your description of what was bothersome to you, what was difficult for you, and see if you notice anything about the qualities that you put in the this is me side and the qualities that you put in the this is not me side. And just see if there's any correlation at all. And if you see any correlation that you feel comfortable talking about, feel free to unmute yourself and share with us. And again, I had said this is not something that I'm going to ask anyone to talk about, but if you, again, you don't need to speak it in very specific terms, but just if you see a general trend or something that you want to share, feel free to do that. And if not, I'll share what I saw and what other people have seen in this. So not wanting to put anyone on the spot here. Yeah, Patty? Can you unmute? Yeah, there you go.
I don't know what I'm saying, so I'll just say it. Should I explain the situation?
If you're comfortable, but not if you're not comfortable, if you want to just say what you notice about the situation and the this is me and this is not me figures.
Okay. The this is not me are actions of this person that I don't like.
Okay.
Or who set me off or.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else see a similar pattern? That the things that are in the this is not me category are the things that upset us? Yeah. I'm seeing a few other nods. Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is very interesting, isn't it? So now at this point, what I'd like to do is ask you to think about, is there some point in your life when you might have acted that way that you can see where, well, you're not generally dishonest, is out, because I'm using that as the example I gave you about myself. Has there ever been a time in my life when I didn't tell the complete truth? Absolutely. I think of myself as kind, but am I always kind? No, I'm really, happy to admit I'm not. I have my moments and I'm not always kind. So check those things out for yourself. Can you see that there might have been a time when you also acted like those characteristics that you put on the side of this is not me? Or is the potential within you that should you maybe have had a different upbringing or had a different, circumstance of your life, married someone different, influenced by other people, might you have been acting in the way that you now see as not your qualities? So either in actuality or potential, can you see the possibility that those qualities could be yours as well? I'm seeing some nods already. Yeah. Okay. So what's intriguing about this to me and very interesting is that when we separate ourselves out like this and we say, this is me over here, but I'm not like that, what happens is we other, right? That's how others do it. Whereas if we admit to ourselves that in potential or sometimes in actuality, we actually have this capacity to behave in any number of ways, some of which we appreciate about ourselves and some of which we completely would reject and not want to be associated with, that we might be getting a more total picture of ourselves and the possibility or potential that exists in each one of us. And in doing that, my hope is that you can see that even when you're in difficulty, you might be able to see a way to connect. because with this more full picture of ourselves, that we're not just this or that in potential we're actually capable of everything, then we have the possibility of having connection even when we're in disagreement or difficulty. Does that make some sense? Yeah, I'm seeing nods again. So this is how Asajuni said it. Let's see. He said, in each of us, there are potentially all the elements and qualities of the human being, the germs of all virtues and of all vices. In each of us, there are the potential criminal and the potential saint or hero. Right? So a beautiful way of saying it. And again, for me, the way I think about this now is that really it's our self-image. This is, again, my working theory. You can decide if this makes any sense, but my working theory is that it's our self-image that becomes our uber subpersonality. It's the thing we most identify with that contains all of the subpersonalities, and that to disidentify that from that requires our embrace of our total potential, which is to say the me and the not me, right? What I like and what I reject. When I can embrace all of that. And again, I'm not suggesting that you can embrace it from your personal self, because as you are as a person, we all have our conditioning. We've been taught to believe certain things, to think that certain behaviors are right, certain behaviors are not okay, right? But from the place of that guiding that we did, from the place of our deepest truth, that part of us that doesn't come and go, that's always accepting, can we see that from there, we're already embracing the totality? It's kind of like we don't have to do it. It's already a done deal. And when we get that, there's a freedom. There's a relaxing, like, oh my gosh. It's like I said before, in the Zen tradition, they call it the backward step. The only doing that I need to do is just like open up for a moment and step back into this place inside of me that is outside of me and inside of me at the same time, right? That everyone shares. I step back into that in my humanness, and then I'm embracing myself and everything else around me from a place of complete unconditional acceptance or love, however you feel it. I don't know about you, but this was a huge discovery for me. This was a big aha. Wow, this is amazing. So again, I want to offer this in a format that you're probably quite familiar with. Oops, not that one. Yeah. I don't know why this keeps going backwards for me, but eek. And then when I try to go this way, it doesn't go. Well, I can completely accept this from the space of awareness. Okay, here we go. So what I'm suggesting here, again, is to see it in another way, is that we have this human side, right? Our humanness, right? Everything about us, the totality of all of our qualities, our possibilities, both the me and the not me, right? And we could say that that's in a sense our personal self, or what we would feel as personal will. And then we notice, we've explored, that we also have something here that is a part of us that is like our being side. So there's human beings, we're all human beings. We have our humanness, we have our beingness. It's kind of like a no thing, right? It has no inherent content, right? Contentless awareness. It's what we disidentify into when we're identified with something in that human realm. And it's the part of us that can embrace everything, right? It's like pure consciousness or love. And then for me, the synthesis of those points, because often in a spiritual path, people will sort of land on one side or the other. They'll feel themselves in a duality, like, oh, I'm so, human. I've got all these things going on. Or, oh, I've transcended all that. I'm in this uber amazing realm of everything's fine. That's just your story. You get people dismissing other people. You get them dismissing human things and feeling like they're not responsible anymore because they know this blissful place. I've heard people speak like this. And so for me, it's not important to rest on one side or the other, but in a true synthesis fashion, to feel that we can be in our humanness and access this that is completely accepting, so that we're willing to be what always is, willing to love and to be loved, willing to be moved to action from this place of what is in the world of time and space. we're willing to act from what is in order to bring forward what yet may be. Do you get the feeling of that, how these come together in that way? Yeah, I'm seeing some nods. So for me, again, this is what the practice of identification, right? When we're in our humanity, we disidentify into the beingness, and then self-identification is where these come together. It's the apex of the triangle. We can see that we are the fullness of our humanity, and we can access a greater spaciousness around that, so that we often have more ease, more love, more peace, more gentleness, more kindness, all of the things that have often been associated with the higher self, right? So that greater realm, the totality. But for me, it's important that we don't just try to be those things, that it's in accepting the totality or the potential of all of our humanity that allows us to access that. It's not just trying to be all those nice qualities that gets us there. So that's a kind of an interesting dynamic or irony for me, or paradox, I guess is the better word. Okay. So again, I want to just pause there and see if you have any questions or thoughts. I'm trying this out with you as my working theory, and I'm curious to see what lands or what doesn't quite land, what feels like it wants some clarification. Yeah, Lynn?
So I'm just thinking about what your synopsis there, to just say it again in another way. So,
Okay.
So the apex is both human and being, obviously.
Yeah.
That incorporates what I am and what I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
Willing to be moved to action.
Right. So again, for me, that phrase comes more from, rather than feeling myself separate, like I'm a willer. You know, I know that language that Asa Jolie has used, but I don't sense it quite as like I'm a willer. It's like I'm willing. I am moved to act from this totality, right?
Mm.
Rather than I'm a separate me and I'm going to make something happen. That this is what I think he was talking about when he said that I and self are not two, right? That they're not separate, that there's this totality that can come together, and that we can be lived from the higher self, this that is transcended, because we know it not as the place on the mountaintop, although we might have experienced it there. We know it because it's here in this moment. It's both in the here and the now, as well as timeless. It's a both and. And so we don't rest on one or the other, like I've got to go to the mountaintop to feel peace. No, I see that standing at the kitchen sink, I can feel this peace here now. I can bring it forward in my day-to-day life, and I can be moved from that to make a choice that is life-giving, right? I can see myself when I'm identified with a reactive point, right? I'm identified with something that is, you know, the way I've seen myself, or the anger I have in that moment. And then I can disidentify into this totality, so that at the apex again, right now I can be moved. I can see, what is my anger calling me to? Am I needing to set a new boundary with someone? You know, am I needing to make reparation because I was angry and I said hurtful things? You see, I can be moved to something greater because I'm not overly identified, but I'm not out in the realm of like, oh, everything's fine. You know, you can walk all over me and do anything you want because I'm in a place of complete acceptance. You know, everything's hunky-dory, even though you just treated me terribly. You know, because I've seen people in the spiritual path get caught over there, feeling like, oh, anything goes. If you come to know the totality of, you know, this place of complete acceptance, then people can even become a doormat for other people, or let themselves be used or manipulated. And I'm not suggesting that that's really healthy. So I'm saying it's when we don't try to land on one side or the other, when we can feel the two, then we're moved to action from what is. That's why I'm saying it that way. Does that make, is that helpful?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that you're using words that describe something I do. I love trying to put words to it. Usually I'm So I'm kind of trying to analyze what I do in these words. So an example of doing that is what I'm thinking of. Can you give an example, like
Yeah.
how you might be moved to action
Yeah.
from the synthesis or
Absolutely.
the keys to realization?
Yeah. So I'll be completely honest. So I've been having an ongoing difficulty with my husband, and I'd gotten triggered, and it's been really hard for me to get past this circumstance that happened because it triggered some memory of the past. And when I rested into this totality, and I even read my own notes about that heartful space, about the potential of the heart to bring us to something that is beyond our knowing. You know, it's that quote that's in the beginning again of our slides every time from Pema Chodron, that there's this place that's limitless. And when I felt into that, I could go to my husband with a more open heart and say, you know, I can hear what you're saying. I also want to share, you know, what's alive for me, and let's find a new way forward. So there was a space that opened up. There was more ease. There was more openness as I was willing to be vulnerable and go to my husband and say, I have been stuck in this place of a closed heart because of this trigger that happened. And when I could say that out loud, something has shifted, and there's a movement that's coming, not from my personal self, because I wanted it to happen earlier, but I could not will myself to do that. I could not will myself to make peace with my husband in this moment. And yet when I rested into this, something new came forward. Is that helpful?
Yeah. So, it's always, when it's concrete, it's always much more helpful to me than the abstract words to put it into a kind of a story.
Absolutely.
No, it's extremely helpful, and I thank you for being willing to share that beautiful, normal challenge that we all have in our relationships in one way or another. So the sense I get is you sit back into the spacious awareness with whatever dilemma is going on, and in that place we are all the same. And you know, you can do what he does, he can do what you do, and then you're trying to find another move to action that's much more compassionate, basically.
Yes. And it doesn't deny that something happened that was true. And so we get to address that. We get to look at that in a very real and authentic way. You know, it's not like just shove that underneath the space of complete acceptance. Oh, everything's fine. It wasn't. You know, there's some things that are good to speak about and to work on. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Anyone else?
So when we're in the human state, we're identifying with our subpersonality or subpersonalities. And when we are in the being state, well, first we have to recognize, be conscious of the subpersonality and its control over us, or its disturbance in us. And then we can see it from the being's point of view as being, embracing it or working with it. And then we self-identify. We identify with the big self as the apex, with the human and the beingness.
Yeah, and for me, that big self is none other than beingness. Like, so that's how I feel the divine beingness. So, but again, I'm not saying that we deny our humanity either. So that's why I have that at the apex of the triangle, that I'm saying that we can immerse ourselves. We can marinate in divine energy, in the beingness while we're in our lives. And that changes everything. Yeah. Yeah. Wendy, I think you're trying to get on. I just need to unmute yourself. Or I can do it if you need me to. Let me see here. So I don't know, Amy, if you have a suggestion. I'm unmuting her, but well, I'll unmute everyone and see if that helps.
Wendy, are you trying to unmute yourself?
I think.
Yes or no?
Is she gone?
Yes, she is trying to unmute herself.
Yeah.
Wendy, you need if I think Barbara just unmuted everybody, but there's a prompt. You have to agree to be unmuted before you all should be unmuted. So look on your screen for that.
Or use the button in the upper right of your screen, of your little screen. I don't know if it's a big screen or a little screen for her.
Did you lose the whole Zoom window, Wendy? Can you see us? It's really small. Okay.
Stop the sharing. Maybe that'll help. Does that come back? Something?
I think it's on Wendy's end. If you can see the window, like click on it on the maybe the lower corner of it to drag it bigger.
Oh, there you go.
I got it.
Okay.
There she is.
That was exciting. That was so exciting. I sort of forgot what I was going to say, except I wrote down that sentence that you just said, that it's such a dynamite sentence. We can marinate in divine energy.
That's very nice.
It's like a knockout sentence. And I think it's opening up for me again what I sensed in a kind of a new discovery last time we met, that divine energy is part of me. It's not the Lord outside me or, somewhere external. And I know that you've said, I know that you've prepared me to come back to that, because that's what you seem to be so aware of and accepting of and believing in. It's a faith that you have, Barbara, that I feel is the strength of. And in a way, I didn't realize that until I just said that this minute, but the idea of marinating in divine energy, I feel like you're the chef in this, and you bring that into the soup, and then I get to feel what it's like. That's all.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I hope you sense, though, that you absolutely have the capacity, because while I appreciate that you acknowledge that I have faith, it's been my own direct experience of this. It's the direct looking and seeing. Is it true that there's something here that's pouring out of my eyes, right? This that is noticing, this what hears. So we could say it's like a function of our ears, but what is actually noticing what comes into the ears, right? There is something here. It's a palpable something. And that, yes, it absolutely is a part of all of us. It's not separated out like there's some divine other, divine God, or that's outside. Yeah, go ahead, Walter.
It's a part of all of us. It's true. What it feels like for me is I'm a part of that. we're all a part of that. And that feels different.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I encourage you to feel it any way that it works for you. Absolutely.
Barbara,
Yeah.
can you tell us where in the process of deciding to talk with your husband, in that beautiful example, where the marinating and the divine energy consciousness came in?
Yeah.
That would help make it even more concrete, is how that very abstract idea fits into the very concrete steps that you took with identifying with how you felt, disidentifying, and getting to self-identification that I guess happened while you were talking with him, it sounded like.
Well, it actually happened over several days. I'll be honest, this is something that wasn't just like a small blip. So it captured my attention, and it wasn't just once, but I literally, so it'd be like how someone might say, like, I prayed about this and I kept praying about it or praying about it. It's like, that's what I kept coming back to when it wouldn't settle, and I was still activated and I was still upset by it. And so that's what, when I say that's my new default, you know, that's what I come back to. That's what and it's why I say practice is 24/7 now for me. It's not like I'm doing this sometimes, but not other times. I just have decided this is the most important thing. This is the biggest contribution I can make to the broken world that we're a part of, the divided, challenging place that we call Earth. It's like when I can access that, something new comes forward, and I'm a better human being for it. And so it's what I've given my life to now. It's the focus of everything for me. So it's not abstract anymore, and I can see where it might feel that way in the beginning, but the more that you return to it and you allow yourself, and that, when I said that about marinating in divine energy, to me, that's all that meditation is. You just set aside a little time to just rest into this spacious quality of unconditional love, and your mind gets going, and you come back, and you get back in the pot, so to speak, right, to marinate some more. And so you come out and you go off and you come back, and then you just keep coming back. And so it's just part of my life. So I'd like to tell you it was like at this moment this happened, but it was over a period of days, and it was coming back over and over and over again. I mean, I set an intention when I go to sleep at night to be conscious in my sleep, to be ever more aware of this, so I'm aware of awareness while I sleep. I mean, really, it's that deep for me, because it seems to me the only way I can find that helps me to make sense of the world that I'm in and the contribution I want to make to it. Because I am politically active. I do a lot of other things, but this is what I feel like is going to be that, Einstein said, we can't get out of the problems we're in with using the same tools that got us here. To me, this is the cutting edge of our moving in a new way in society, is to see that there's another way to be in relationship to people, that we can feel connection even across lines of division. And that when we can do that, we're kinder and gentler and more loving human beings. And it seems to me that's a new way to be, that might help us go through this polarity that we're in. So,
and the way you describe it is meditating on awareness of awareness.
That's how it kind of can feel, right? You're aware of awareness. So for a long time, awareness was too big of a word. That was quite abstract for me. But someone once said to me that attention and awareness are the same thing. And that I could see, attention felt closer in. So I could put my attention on awareness. And when I did that, I was in awareness, because attention and awareness are the same. And so, so when I would get distracted and my attention would go elsewhere, I'd bring my attention back to awareness. Yeah.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Amy.
Is it the same? Are you doing the same thing when you're focusing on the space between the physical space?
Absolutely. Because really, to me, the space is awake itself. The space is awake awareness, because if it's pouring out of my eyes and pouring out of your eyes, the space itself, right? When we look at it, right, from consciousness, we see consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like there's space and that's something different than the awareness that's looking at it. Then I can see that they're not separate either. That there's this inherent unity among all things. Yeah. Go ahead, Lynn.
Well, So I love that word, marinating in the divine light, basically. And some people might ask questions when you're in that spaciousness. But do you just marinate in it? Do you just sit in it? Do you just trust that just by being in it, you will come to a greater awareness or understanding or a move to action that will be different? So it's not so much dialoguing with that place, but just being in it. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that doesn't mean that there cannot be an inquiry also, right? So it's the spaciousness that allows everything. So if you're moved to write while you're in that space. If you're moved to ask a question, if you're moved to ask for guidance from, if you feel it as like the higher guides around you, then by all means, because all of that is contained in this totality. To me, that resting in the awareness or the beingness doesn't disclude or, doesn't set anything aside. It's all in the realm of the possible. And if you're acclimated to talk to beings, to talk to guides, if you're acclimated to feel it in writing, to ask a question, then by all means, trust that. That's the movement moving, right? That is coming from the totality. So, I know people who have taken a question and just sat with it. And that's absolutely what happened when the clearest seeing of this lack of separation of the totality of our being came forward. I think I told this story on another of our sessions, but I'll briefly just recount it. I was on a 9-day silent retreat. And in the very beginning of the retreat leader said, all that's happening is that consciousness just is here, but it's bending back on itself. And it's saying, this is me, like we just did in that exercise, right? This is me and this is all of you out there, right? And consciousness just is, but when we come into a human body, it bends back on itself and it identifies with the me over here. So I was really intrigued by that. And I thought to myself, or I could say the question arose, right, from being itself. And on day 8 of this 9-day retreat, I would just sat with it, like, that's curious. What's that about? What is this turning on? So I was really inquiring into, what does self-conscious do that? Why does consciousness turn back and make me feel like I'm separate if there's really no separation here? And, so I was asking this question kind of over and over again. What's that all about? What is that turning, that bend? I think of it as the U-turn of consciousness. Why does consciousness turn back on itself in the human form? And on day 8, the question arose, just because there's self-consciousness, the question came, does that mean there's a self? So just because there's self-consciousness, does that mean there's a separate self here? And when that question arose, I could say when I asked the question, but you'll see in a moment, when I asked the question, the clarity came that I wasn't separate. There wasn't a separate me here, because that's what I used to think. I had to get rid of myself to be in the totality of our being. I had to, get rid of the small me in order to be enlightened or whatever. And when I asked that question, just because there's self-reflection or self-consciousness, does that mean there's a separate self? The answer came like that, no, there was nothing there separate. It was all the totality, but it's living itself as this form called Barbara over here. And it's living itself as Patty, and it's living itself as Amy, and as Wendy and Carlin and Walter and Lynn and all those that are with us today. It's like, that's what lives us. But because it bends back, we feel like we're separate. It's kind of, sometimes people say it's an illusion. That doesn't mean that life is an illusion, that, this table over here isn't here, or that I'm not here. I am. We're here too, but the sense of ourself as separate is illusion. So it's deep looking and inquiry that can bring you there. It's writing that can bring you, it's just trust what you're moved to do when you're sitting silently. Trust it. Yeah. I mean, I do find stillness supports quieting of the streams of mind. Many others report that. So that's why I gave you those 3 things, to commit to being still, right? So if you go back and review last time when we talked about those 3 commitments, those are tried and true methods for finding this place of complete peace and love. But, maybe you're the one to find a new way and share it all with us. So. I don't want to say that it's like going to be that way only. I don't believe that. The human potential is myriad. It's absolutely unlimited.
Okay, thank you.
So, yeah. Wendy,
Am I unmuted?
you are. Yes.
So it just reminded me of something I heard the other day, and I can't remember where, but I'm pretty sure this is Rumi, who said, "Why are you struggling so hard to open that door or even get through that door when the wall is an illusion?"
Yeah.
Mm.
Right. Well, you're already inside, right? You think you need to get to the divine room. It's like you're already in the room, right? That's why I keep trying to say, right, to open up to the space, to feel yourself. It's like the figure and ground. If you've seen those, right, where you look at it one way and it looks like it's a glass, and the other way it looks like there's a person there, and then you can see the totality. It's both and. So that's what we're doing when we're opening out. We're opening out and we're seeing the totality that, yes, we're here, we're in a body, and we're bigger than that. We're more than that, right? That's right. I have a body and I'm more than that. Those are the famous, right, parts of that disidentification. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
So
I think
just want to say, I know Walter has to go right at the half-hour point here. So Walter, all I was going to invite people to do was to look at, is there one key from all these different things that we're saying? So I would just invite you to do that. That's what's on that last slide. And again, I just summarized some of this. I'm using language like, World Wide Web, like stay connected, plug yourself in, marinate, so that's what's on that summary slide. So that's the last thing I would just want to reference here. But I felt like this was so important to unpack rather than just share more words with you. And since you had those slides, I didn't want to take our time to just keep throwing those up when feeling it, kind of sensing into and giving ourselves permission to kind of, find our way with it is so essential. So
Thank you. Thank you all for your questions. It's wonderful.
yeah, great. Walter, I appreciate you. Thank you for being here, and enjoy your next event. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, good. So we can all stay on here, and if it's helpful to look at that question, like is there one key takeaway here now? We could do that and give maybe a moment of quiet for you to jot a note or two for something you want to remember for yourself. Would that be a helpful next step here? Yeah, some nods. Okay, great. I'll put that up on the screen for those who can see it. Right. So this is the little summary piece that I was suggesting to Walter to look at. And again, I tried to just use terms that were about connection, right? So these SEO, space, embracing, openness, right? That self-compassion, vulnerability, plugging in, moving from separation to what's true. Notice when we make it about the other person, right? And can you take it back? Can you take back your projections, right? That's not me. I'm not like that. Oh, can you find that in yourself? And now you're connected again, even at least in potential, right? So what difference can you imagine? That's the reflection questions. What difference can you imagine that these insights will make for you toward more conscious relating? Is there one key that you need to embrace for yourself in order to more deeply resource yourself to meet personal challenges? So I'll leave those up and give you a little time to reflect and write.
Which slide are you on, Barbara?
Okay, yeah, this is number 23, Carlin.
Thank you.
Could you put the 1, 2, 3 thing?
The summary.
Yeah.
Okay. Oops. Right there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Could you put the questions up too?
Sure.
Thank you.
Anyone need a little more time for their writing? No? Okay. So again, not to put anyone on the spot, but I do want to just create the space if there's anything that you want to share, that you feel just you want to be witnessed and stating that this is what you're going to embrace or do for yourself or for others. Just happy to create that space. Yeah, Lynn?
Well, one way that I can typically get triggered is if somebody's really angry and rageful, and I get scared or intimidated, and little. And so, you know, if I know that, so I'm trying to look at these things and say, which one would I use in that instance? You know, and if I notice when it's a kind of an othering thing, you know, that somebody else is scary. And if I'm going into the contentless awareness, the place where I am safe and scary myself, or where everything is safe in spirit, you know, I try to rest back into that place. I'm not sure how to use it in that instance. In that place where I'm most triggered, with the place where I'm most vulnerable. How to comfort myself in that moment. You know, somebody's getting loud or angry or big or rageful or just looks scary.
Yeah. So could we talk about that for a minute right now?
Sure. Yeah.
So when this is going on, is it possible that you can not just feel like you have to kind of make yourself safe, but from the place of the safety, might there be an action on your part that's called for, which is to say, maybe does it arise to you to say, look, this energy or this anger is not serving me, I'm going to go take a walk. You know, so like just because we can access it doesn't mean we have to stay resting in it. I don't want to, you know, imply that we rest there and we just let anything go on around us that is difficult. Maybe resting there, we get the intuition or the knowingness comes to say, oh, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to remove myself and say, this is not supportive to me. I'm going to go watch a TV program in the other room, or I'm going to go take a walk, or, you know, is there a way you can disengage if the anger is something that you're not feeling is, you know, that you want to stay and listen to from the other person? Again, I don't want to get too personal, but, you know, are there other options that might be coming from the totality of this unconditional acceptance? But in our humanness, right, we also have limits. We have boundaries, and we can state that. That's why it's so important to me that we see that that's the apex, because we don't deny our humanity when we embrace this divine aspect of ourselves. We are in them together. It's both and. So I love that you brought this example up.
It'd be interesting to be able to find that place of calming and groundedness when it's not, it's, the body's going danger, danger, danger. It's not really a danger. It's just a trigger of anger,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
So it's almost like staying grounded in the midst of somebody who's activated.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which happens all the time.
I mean, the one thing that I've learned most recently on that is that attachment, that when we see someone else in a place that is difficult for us, like to mirror back. So I can see you're really, really angry, right? And so you meet them where they are. So you talk about it and they say, yes, I'm very angry, blah, 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 right? And yeah, it's just so angry, it really feels like rage even. Is that what you're experiencing? So sometimes by creating a container and allowing the person to say, I see you, the person feels held and they feel seen, then they're able to come down and sort of de-escalate themselves when they feel acknowledged. Like, yeah, I'm really angry because of this, this, and this. Oh, okay, so I hear you saying, so so this is what I do a lot now. I repeat back as if I'm a mirror, right? Because in a sense, content-less awareness is like a mirror, right? It's noticing everything, but not reacting to it. So I take the place of, if you will, content-less awareness in its ability to mirror, right? To just reflect back, oh, this is what's happening. Oh, okay, so you're really, really angry. You want to say more about that anger, right? So I actually invite it forward rather than pushing it away. Because pushing it away isn't what content-less awareness does, right? It just accepts. But there are times in my humanness when maybe I don't feel safe, and that doesn't mean you have to stay there and mirror. You can also leave. Yeah. So can you feel how both of those responses might give you another way to move with it?
Yeah. I think my goal would be to stay present and be able to work with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's good. I like the idea, of noticing it and inviting it present. And to make space for it.
Yeah. And in my experience, when I'm working with or dealing with somebody who's really upset and enraged, when they feel seen, they're more apt to be able to come down back into themselves more than if I tell them they shouldn't be like that. Right. Told you need to change before I'll talk to you, and I'm like, like there's no place for that stuff to go.
Right.
You need it, with just that mirroring back. I see that you're very upset. I noticed, you said this happened, really? Okay, tell me more about that. And depending on the situation you're in, if the person's open to it, you can say, so where do you feel that in your body, right? So you try to help them get in their body, right? Because often they're not in their body. They're really activated. They're kind of out, right, in their own place of disconnect, in a sense, right? They're in their reptilian self. Yeah.
That's good. Thank you.
Sure.
Can I just add something that came to my mind was that, is it Lynn?
Yes.
Yeah. That Lynn, you said something about othering, and and I heard some judgment about that for you, that you don't want to go there. But what's so interesting is that that's exactly in a way where, Barbara, you're going when you're saying, basically, you are actually drawing a line and saying, oh, this is your anger. I see your anger. It's not, I mean, it's mysterious to me. It's a little bit of a paradox or something that that boundary is actually helpful and useful. It's not dismissive. It's conclusive in some way, which allows you then to what you said, to mirror.
Yeah.
Instead of absorb.
Remember a time when you were really angry, right? It's like you can identify. Oh, I know. Yeah, you seem really upset. Yeah, I've been really upset in my life too. I mean, so then you're saying you're the human being right now who has the upset, but you're not separating, saying I've never been upset or rageful. So that's you're remaining in connection by acknowledging what's happening for that other person. And that's what allows us, I think, when we can see that we haven't othered, that, oh, you know, if you felt like you were never capable of that rage, or maybe you've never expressed it like that in your lifetime, and that's perfectly understandable. It would be really hard then for you to stay connected. And yet that's that compassionate space of our beingness, which we just looked at together, right? In our own direct experience, we can see that it completely accepts. And so in that acceptance, I can find some space within me to identify with this person, even though I've not in my human form spoken like that or done that exact same thing, right? So again, now we're in potentiality, but in potential, because I'm human, right? The whole range of the human, all of our capacities, right, are all within each one of us. That's that Asajoli quote, right? The saint and the sinner, we exist, that all exists within each one of us. So now we can kind of find our way to connect with this person, even if in our humanness, we've not really, we haven't behaved quite that way before ourselves. Does that make sense? So I'm saying it's both and. So yes, we're making a distinction saying that's what that person is experiencing, while we're also holding the knowingness that that could have been me.
Right, the common humanity.
Yeah, common humanity, that's right. Yeah. Wendy, does that make sense? Does that speak to what you were saying?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Good, good. Anyone else want to, or share anything about what you're working on, what your key takeaway is, anything that you feel like is going to be supportive for you, that you want to be witnessed? And again, no pressure, just want to make sure there's space. Yeah, Amy? We're not hearing you because you're muted.
There, thanks. Yeah, I was just, I wanted to reiterate or like revisit for a minute and affirm, I guess, just that I feel like you've given me a bedrock of understanding about this process of the default network, as you have called it in the past, in your other presentations, being, the reptilian brain activity, fear-based, constantly referencing, am I safe in all these ways, socially, etc. And that what we're building is this, as you said, this like physical network in the brain that is being built when we are, as you say now, marinating in awareness and in the present moment. You're literally every moment we do that. I'm just reiterating what you said before because it struck me so much, and it's that like literally every time we come back to the now, to the moment, noticing the space around us. Bilateral stimulation, like is another form of awareness, right? That bringing into awareness that like all of these are literally building this alternate network so that we're not going to this old fear-based default network, that we're able to be in this spacious higher self awareness.
Yeah.
Did I get it?
About it, if I had a weight in my arm and I was lifting it like this, right, I'd be building the muscle. So we're literally building capacity to be with difficulty in a new way,
right?
Than what we were maybe taught or what was modeled for us, because we all come in with these very imperfect, beautifully loving sometimes parents, but we see around us and we absorb, and it's an absorption of the culture. It's an absorption of this, sense of I need to protect myself and I've got to puff myself up and state how wonderful I am all the time, because that's what our culture is doing constantly, right? So yeah, we're learning a new way to be, and we're building more capacity for this other way that is inherently it sounds so silly, inherently our inheritance. It's like it's already here, and it's what's coming alive, it feels like to me, in the culture also, while the kind of aspects of unawareness are here, more awareness is coming in to meet that almost, so like both are happening at the same time. You know, there's a lot of movement around, you know, this stuff. You can go in a bookstore and find lots of books about this today that you wouldn't have found 20 years ago, right? So we're in the midst of a shift, a big transformative shift, it seems to me, and we're a part of that. Yeah, absolutely. So I hope that speaks to it. You know, it's like the muscle, right? We're building the capacity, and I want to say it's not just in the brain. So I have an article I'm going to share with you, but the capacity of the heart, that's why I called this open-hearted expression, is that as we can stabilize, yes, there's something going on here, but we're more able to access the heart intelligence. And some people say that there are actually more electrons, more, the electromagnetic field of the heart is actually greater than that is emanating from our brain.
Wow.
I actually have that detail right here, so I'm going to pick it up and read it to you. It's from an article. I don't know if you're familiar with the work of an organization called Heart Math. Have you heard of Heart Math? Yeah. So this is from their organization, and the gentleman there who is the director of research at Heart Math, he suggests that the heart, well, this is fact, the heart is the first organ to function when we are in utero. Okay,
Right.
so it's the first functioning organ. And he says the heart's electromagnetic field is about 5 times stronger than that of the cranial brain. And it interacts with and permeates every cell of our body. So I'm getting an echo. Are you getting me?
We're hearing your echo.
Where
You
that-
might want to turn down your volume.
Okay, perfect. I'll take care of it. Oh, it's still there. I don't know where that is.
Maybe put in your headset again.
Thanks. Okay, is that any better? No, it's still there.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that just for me to stop talking. So I'll share this article with you so you have it. But it's more about that. The heart itself has its own intelligence.
That's
It's
amazing.
not just a muscle that's pumping blood, which I find fascinating.
That's cool. Thank you.
So the echo's gone, so I just want to read this one little other detail here. So it says, according to neurocardiologists, 60 to 65% of heart cells are neuron cells, not muscle cells. This discovery has helped them develop experiments that have proved that heart works similar to the brain and in some ways is even superior to the brain. This may be the reason that the heart is the first organ to function after conception. Within about 20 days after conception, the heart starts to function, but the brain does not function until after roughly 90 days.
Wow.
Yeah, just interesting. So while we're growing that aspect of the brain, we're also coming in the capacity. To me, it feels like it's coming into the heart and into the body where the gut has its own intelligence also. If you read about, right, the biome, they call it, of the gut, that there are actually all these neurons there. That's why when we get a gut feeling, right, we know something that we don't know how we know it, it's the gut. So for me, as we're growing that part of the brain, we're coming and inhabiting the body more so that we're coming into our heart intelligence and our gut intelligence, and we're able to access more of the qualities of our human being while we're in the human body. Yeah. So anyway, anyone else want to share or ask? Or
Would you be willing to read the thing that you read when the echo first started? Because I didn't get to hear all of that.
You bet. So this is according to Roland McCarty, who is the director of research at the Institute of Heart Math. The heart's electromagnetic field is about 5,000 times stronger than that of the cranial brain, interacting with and permeating every cell of our bodies.
Electromagnetic field.
Yeah, so there's actually, you know how when you're around somebody, you can feel like some people make you feel more calm, some people make you feel agitated, right? So that's what they're pointing toward, right? We all have kind of a sense about ourselves, right? Depending on where we're at in our state of being, whether we're, activated in our own heads, we're feeling spacious in the quality of the heart. You can feel that when you walk in a room with people, right? So that's what they call it, the electromagnetic field. Some other people might call it your aura. I'm sure it has different language in different spiritual traditions.
But you're saying there's a scientific thing that can be measured. That's an electromagnetic field.
Yes.
It's caused by the neurons, by this density of neurons in the heart.
Yes. And so when the heart comes into what's called coherence, that's what we're doing when we're doing the guiding and we're immersing and marinating. We're coming into more coherence. So we feel calmer, we feel more whole, and then we're transmitting that. That's what then our signal, right? We walk around in the world when we're accessing that, we're sharing it. Yeah, because people can feel it. Absolutely. So it's absolutely not abstract to me. It's real and concrete, and it can be measured. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Great.
Wow.
Yeah.
There it
Anyone
goes.
else? Yeah.
5 of 9 already here.
I
Thank you.
know it. Yeah. So we're winding down. Does everyone feel complete? And no lingering.
Yeah. Right.
Something that wants to be spoken or said? No? Okay, great. Well, thank you all so very much for your contributions, for making this gathering what it is. I'll tell you, it's so rich to be with all of you and all of our different journeys, and to learn from each one of you and keep sharing. So thank you very much for all of it.
Thank you, Barbara.
And thank you for all the inspiration.
Yay. Great. All right. Many blessings to all of you, and I will see you. So we meet now next week. We don't have a week off. We have the last one is next Tuesday. So I'll be in touch with you, but I want to hear if you're finding any ways that you work with clients that are some best practices that you're finding help people with this. I'm going to ask people to share that ahead of time this week so I can put some of that together in the slides if there are any things you want to contribute. So kind of co-create this last session. But then again, I also have some things I'll be sharing, but I'm really excited to hear what's alive and what's working, or what your questions are. So. And
I'm sad to say I have a professional commitment that predates or even knowing about this course, so I won't be here.
Okay.
I want to make an invitation and for you all to join us on May 19th to celebrate Call of Self coaching.
Great. And
the co-authors, such as yourself, Barbara, who will be present with us at St. James. Did you know that, Lynn?
No.
Barbara's going to be with us at PSNE on May 19th at St. James at our regular monthly gathering. And Dee Dee will be as well, and probably a few other co-authors from her Call of Self coaching book.
Yay, great. And I did hear a yes to the date was July 28th, Saturday. So if you want to put that on your calendars, I'm going to get something out in the next week about that so we can gather at the lake for a day. It looks like several of you want to do that and can. And I'm excited. So we'll at least have the one day there. And if it works and people are open, I'm happy to share that other day in August as well. So yeah, a few people weren't sure about their calendars, but I'm just going to go forward and plan. And yeah, so excited. Thank you, Carlin, and everyone, Amy, for getting this off.
See you all soon, one way or another.
Yes, very good.
Thank you.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Barbara, can I
Yes,
ask you a question?
You bet. I'll stay on, Patty. Okay, great. Anyone else wants to go, feel free. Yeah. Great.
I wanted to ask you, is there any chance that could be a weekend?
Well, I'm happy to, just individually make it a weekend. I didn't hear from others that they wanted to make it a full weekend, but if you're inclined and you want to come spend time out there, I'm happy to have you. Yeah.
Great.
Yep. So I can make it a weekend for sure.
Great.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So we can talk more about that. It depends on the time of year. Sometimes we have other folks staying at the house, but there's a hotel 3 miles away, or if there's a room open, you're welcome to stay at our place. So yeah, and I'll put that out. Anybody else that wants to make it a weekend, we can do that. So
great. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay. Good night. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.